What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 491 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, April 26, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you haven't already, please check out my exclusive interview that dropped this morning here on the channel in an article form over on Bleacher Report with Stone Cold Steve Austin, talking all about his new A&E show, why he did not wrestle at WrestleMania 39, if you would consider wrestling again, thoughts on LA Knight, the What Chant, and a ton more. Really fun interview. My second time shooting the breeze with the Texas Rattlesnake, the first time being a little over 2 years ago in late 2020, early 2021. So we run it back on video this time here on the channel. Like I said, you can check out the full article as well for all the highlights over on Bleacher Report. The full video is available right here on the channel from this morning. Over 20 minutes of conversation with myself and Steve. A real honor and honestly one of my favorite interviews I probably have either done in recent memory, if not ever. So I would really appreciate if you check it out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe here to the channel for more content like this, interviews, excerpts of the podcast every Thursday, and so much more. So be sure to check out the channel for more content like that here on the daily, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/gram.gsm.matthews. Drop a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So we got a ton of questions, as you could probably imagine, about the new World Heavyweight Championship. Is it necessary? Who's going to be the inaugural champion? Stuff like that. We'll get into all of that momentarily. I may honestly just go off about it because there are some pros, a lot more cons in my opinion about this new World Heavyweight Championship. I have a lot of thoughts about it. Anything I don't address here and I forget to bring up, I'll just acknowledge and discuss on WrestleRant Radio on Thursday with RJ. I want to gauge his thoughts as well on the whole situation. We'll go back and forth about it. But as the title of this video suggests, we're going to do a lot of talking about the World Heavyweight Championship momentarily because you guys asked so many questions about it, and understandably so. So this is going to be my first time talking about it in like an audio format. I gave my brief thoughts in the Raw review on WrestleRant.com a couple days ago, but I've been waiting for this opportunity to really, I don't want to say go off on it as if it's an awful thing, but I just have a lot of thoughts as to why I don't think it makes sense. So we'll get to that momentarily, a bit of a teaser for you for coming up here on the episode. Central Man Network. Their first question from YouTube was, Wardlow regaining the TNT title against Powerhouse Hobbs was dumb. What were your thoughts? I also thought it was quite dumb. I like Wardlow a lot. I love Powerhouse. I think they're both great. I thought the match was good. I just don't see the purpose of taking the championship off of Wardlow only to put it right back on him a month later. What, to get a feud out of it? Is it about the fucking chase? I mean, Wardlow chased the championship for months, got it back at Revolution from Samoa Joe, dropped it fucking 3 days later, and no one came out of this looking better for it whatsoever. Wardlow looks like a loser for dropping the championship within 3 days. Powerhouse Hobbs had one of the most forgettable reigns in recent memory, and that's coming off the reigns of Scorpio Sky and Sammy Guevara last year, among other people. Darby Allin got the belt back for a little while. Honestly, I was among those that did not mind when Darby Allin won the championship in his native Washington or whatever it was a couple of months ago, because it was a great moment. It was a great match. He and Joe had a nice back and forth feud. I was okay with that. Wardlow then beating Joe made sense. Whatever, he got the belt back at Revolution, ended the rivalry, okay. And I think Hobbs is great. I would have been fine with Hobbs taking the championship from Wardlow a couple days after Revolution if they ran with Hobbs as a dominant champion. Instead, the first fucking night that he beats Wardlow for the TNT Championship, he's paired with QT Marshall, which serves zero purpose. Marshall is awful. I'm sorry. He just adds nothing to the show. He's not that great. He's not outstanding in any way. Oh, he gets heat. Like, who gives a fuck? Hobbs was already perfectly fine on his own. They put QT Marshall with him. The QTV crap got way more exposure than Hobbs did as champion. Had a couple of defenses on Dynamite, or on Rampage rather. Who gives a shit? And then when he finally defends the championship on Dynamite, I know he faced Silas Young a couple of weeks ago, but again, who cares? He beat Silas Young. He then goes on to lose to Wardlow. And the very next match they have for that championship, just over a month later. That TNT Championship serves no purpose. It is a pointless prop at this point, and I can't bring myself to care. So it was a very dumb idea. I really want this reign for Wardlow to be better than the first. definitely better than the second. I'm not optimistic because the booking of that championship has been so, we're going to put it on this person, then this person, this person. Like, it's changed hands probably 6 times maybe in the span of 5 or 6 months. That's not normal, nor is that sustainable. So I'm really hoping that they can run with Wardlow as champion and not take the championship off of him within a month. I mean, he was champion the first time for like 4 or 5 months. The problem was that he was either A, never on Dynamite, or when he wasn't really doing much of note. That's got to change now. He's got to have a meaningful run, put the championship on him, have some quality feuds, and then go from there. Really try to rebuild Wardlow. And if you're not going to do that, then take the championship off of him, throw it into the trash, and find another way to rebuild Wardlow. I know they're teasing a feud with him and Christian Cage. Great. Christian Cage is great. Big fan of his. Should be a quality match. And I would love if Christian became champion at some point, but I think it would be best to keep the championship on Wardlow for the foreseeable future. And by that I mean for like a couple of months. The game of hot potato at the championship has got to end, and it's got to end now. His second question, can you see Braun Breaker getting called up to the main roster via the draft? What show would he end up on? I could, and I don't think we're going to get it yet. I think Braun Breaker probably is main roster ready. I mean, the guy was champion for a year. He just lost it a month ago, or a little less than a month ago, at Stand and Deliver. But then last night on NXT, and I expected this to happen, Carmelo Hayes challenged Braun Breaker to a rematch at Battleground. For the reason being, Breaker attacked him a couple of weeks ago. Breaker said he doesn't want the championship, but Hayes wants a rematch because Breaker attacked Hayes a couple days after he won the championship, cementing his heel turn for Breaker, blah, blah, blah. And I figured, honestly, like, I thought there was a chance Breaker might win at Stand and Deliver, and he could turn heel there, or like soon afterward, and Hayes can win it at Battleground. I'm glad Hayes won it when he did at Stand and Deliver, but I always figured they would do a rematch at Battleground because they're going to be in Massachusetts, and that's where Hayes is from. They were turning him babyface anyway. It makes perfect sense. Could you do Hayes in another heel, like a heel instead of Breaker at that show, and Hayes would still get the hometown advantage? Sure, but I think it makes more sense with Breaker turning heel. He's got the heat. They're going to boo him in Lowell, Massachusetts. I think it's a great dynamic. So with all of that being said, that to me delays the idea of Breaker getting called up. Could he be drafted to the Raw or SmackDown roster and then still go to Battleground and get the championship match? Sure, and maybe it was a red herring. Maybe they, which I would be very surprised by. I would be very surprised if they built up that match last night on NXT and then drafted Breaker to Raw or SmackDown this coming Friday or next Monday. I would be very surprised by that. I think it's more likely he's not drafted. I mean, realistically, why wouldn't you draft Braun Breaker or Carmelo Hayes? I mean, this is the issue that we've run into for years now. Like when they draft NXT superstars, from a booking standpoint, it makes sense to draft people who are ready, who aren't doing anything right now. But realistically, if anyone is eligible from NXT, why would you not pick the top people? Like in the 2016 draft, for example. No one drafted, I think it was, Bobby Roode wasn't there yet, but like Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura, like those people didn't go in the draft. Finn Balor did, because guess what? He wasn't doing anything from a booking standpoint. Realistically, why would you not draft Bayley in that draft, or Nakamura, or Samoa Joe? Or a couple of years ago, they drafted fucking Aaliyah to the main roster, but not any of the other talented women that in that NXT women's division 2 years ago. It just doesn't make any sense. You kind of have to suspend your disbelief with a lot of this shit when it comes to the draft. They just don't do it properly most of the time. My point is, he will be main roster bound soon. I don't think it's going to happen in the draft, just because if they're doing the rematch with Hayes, which they announced last night, not made official, but it looks like they're headed in that direction, I would see them waiting until maybe after SummerSlam. Now, I don't know what you do with Breaker in the meantime. I mean, Bayley, for example, was the NXT Women's Champion. Or no, she wasn't actually the NXT Women's Champion in the 2016 draft, and she still did not get picked. But they did that for a reason, because they wanted to do the rematch with her and Asuka at TakeOver Brooklyn 2, I think it was, that summer. And then literally right after she lost, she was brought up to Raw, like on that subsequent Raw in August, like a month later. So I could see Breaker having the rematch with Hayes. Maybe he gets the belt back and gets big heat for it, and then they have a rubber match and Hayes wins it back at like another show. More realistically, Hayes will probably win the rematch, as he should. And then you can have Breaker get called up after that in time for June. I mean, usually SummerSlam around that season after SummerSlam is the right time to call up people because it's like a fresh start like WrestleMania. As long as they have a plan in place for when they call him up and he's not just there doing nothing, that's the key. As far as what show I think he'd be better on, we really don't know until after we see what the draft kind of does to the Raw and SmackDown rosters, what those rosters look like coming out of the draft. He feels like more of a Raw guy to me, but if he goes to SmackDown, that's fine too. Nike Only's question: who should be the first wrestler to win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship? So let's get right into it because this was the first question I had on the document about it. I'll read all the other questions because we got a lot of questions about this. So Nike Only asked about it. No L asked about thoughts on the new World Heavyweight Championship belt and who should win it at Night of Champions. At Lily Reynolds, who do you think will be the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion? At Iwagu91, your thoughts on the new World Heavyweight Championship, its design, and who you think will be the inaugural champion. At noob_n_co TV, your thoughts on the reveal of the new WWE World title. He said, I believe it's better than the current WWE titles, but I get a feeling that we might get some more redesigned titles for WWE sometime down the road. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the YouTube Machine and on Twitter. Check out his YouTube channel, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Always does great work. His question was, a new world title, does this not make the unification of both world titles last year even more ridiculous? At Kyle Rochelle asked, I know these aren't all exactly the same question, but I feel like I'm going to answer all of these questions in one setting here. I might go on a little bit long about this, so I figured I would just include them all at once. Kyle Rochelle 19 said, what's so wrong with having a world champion on Raw since Roman Reigns is only on SmackDown and never shows up on Raw? I understand that you should keep the champion special and wait until someone beats him. It should be Seth Rollins, but Raw needs a champion. It's been a year, so I'm okay with it. So I think that's everything as far as the World Championship is concerned. We had other questions stemming from that about the brand split and stuff like that, which we'll get into. So listen, for this new World Heavyweight Championship, I'll start off with the positives. The positive is we're finally going back to 2 World Championships. I like that idea. Some people will not agree with that, and that's fine. I've seen some people say, I saw Ariel Helwani say the other day, I think that there should be only 1 World Champion that goes between the brands. That would have been fine too. I am more in favor personally of just having 2 World Champions, especially if you're going to actually stick to the brand split rules. And nothing about this upcoming draft has indicated to me, or anyone I think, that they intend to stick to the brand split rules this time. Compared to, in the 2000s, they shockingly went on with the brand split for a lot longer than I think people probably expected. They didn't really ditch the first brand split, officially not until 2011, 2012. So it lasted around 10 years. But they did a lot of swapping back and forth. The draft meant fucking nothing. They did the draft every year from 2002, most years from 2002 to 2011. But you still had people going back and forth and showing up in random places and shit. They got rid of it in 2011, completely in 2013 when they did away with the 2 World Championships. They brought it back in 2016. It was even less time that they actually stuck to the brand split stuff. They stuck to it for the most part for maybe a year or two. And then in 2019, the fucking wild card rule bullshit, or whatever the fuck it was, and all this other dumb shit. So that happened in 2021, or they brought back the draft that year after the wild card shit was over, and they still went against the brand split rules in 2020 with the brand invitational crap. They kind of moved away from it when Triple H took over, and even before that, they were still having people from SmackDown show up on Raw and vice versa. So it hasn't really meant anything in years. You need 2 World Championships to me. I'm not saying they have the deepest roster of all time right now. I just think you need 2 World Championships, personally. I just think it works a lot better that way. I think it gives people more opportunities, assuming the championships are on the same level. Now, that goes into the negative category, the category of negatives is that what that falls under. I'll get to that in a moment. Also, under the positives, I actually like the design. I've seen a lot more positive reception about the new championship design than negative. I'm not saying if you think it's negative, then it's you're fucking wrong. I actually like it personally. It's a nod to the big gold belt, the original World Heavyweight Championship. And I also like they're just going with the World Heavyweight Championship name from 10 years ago and not coming up with a Galaxy Championship or a Universe. Who gives a fuck? You already have the lineage within. I mean, I don't even know if they're going to use the lineage of the World Heavyweight Championship. They haven't acknowledged that. They haven't said that. I don't think they will. I don't even think it's called the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. That, to me, reminds me of when they merged the two World Heavyweight and WWE titles 10 years ago. And it was called the WWE World Heavyweight Championship from 2013 through 2016 when they had the two World Championships again. And then it went to WWE World Champion for a very brief period, and then just right back to WWE Champion. I would just call it the World Heavyweight Championship. It's a nod to the big gold belt. They got to have their fucking logos on everything, so you couldn't bring back just the belt itself, although I would have preferred that. I still think it's a modernized, nice-looking version of the big gold belt, and the big gold belt was beautiful, but if we have to have logos on everything, it could have been made a little bit smaller, but overall it looks cool. I can't complain about that. It looks very nice. And the reason I think they're not going to kind of tie the two lineages together, the only reason I think they're not going to do that is because they did not do that when they instituted the World Heavyweight Championship under the WWE banner in 2002. So obviously the World Heavyweight Championship big gold belt goes back to like the NWA and WCW, and they brought that into WWE. That exact belt was part of the invasion. Merged it with the WWE title, had the unification match in late 2001, and it was the WWF title at that point, whatever. And they had two titles, like Triple H and Jericho were holding the two world championships for a short while before debuting the Undisputed Championship a short while later. I think in like right after WrestleMania, I believe, because I remember when Hogan won the championship, not that I was watching back then, but Hogan had the one championship. So I think Triple H must have been given the belt. I don't know when that was. That Undisputed Championship. But even still, later on that year, when they brought in the World Heavyweight Championship for the Raw brand, because the exact same thing happened, where there was an Undisputed Champion in the company. They instituted the brand split in early 2002. 6 months go by. For whatever reason, they did not want the champion traveling between both brands. I wasn't watching WWE at that point, so I can't say, the champion was only on SmackDown or they were only on Raw. I mean, it was Raw that got fucked because Brock Lesnar won the championship. He was on Raw at the time. He went to SmackDown. The storyline reason for it, I don't remember. But because of that, I think they were saying, Brock doesn't want to defend on Raw. We need our own championship. I'm not really sure what the logic at that point was behind having two world titles. They had a really deep roster. Maybe that was it. As opposed to having Brock just defend on both shows as he was, or whoever the Undisputed Champion was at that point. It was kind of primarily exclusive to SmackDown at that point anyway. But regardless, they did not, what I'm trying to get out here is that they did not use the World Heavyweight Championship lineage. It was not the same title. The WWE's version of the World Heavyweight Championship, Big Gold, the lineage does not carry over. Unless I'm wrong, with the last I checked, it starts in 2002 with Triple H as the inaugural champion, which is ironic because he just debuted. He brought back the Big Gold on Monday. He was just given the fucking title from Eric Bischoff because Triple H was the top guy in Raw at the time. So the negatives. The problem with this championship, as everyone else has already said, this is not news, and I said this myself on Twitter on Monday because I watched Raw a little bit later on Monday night, and as soon as I was finished, I tweeted this out. It is a fucking consolation prize. It is. It basically says, coming off of what Triple H said on Monday, and all he could talk about in that promo was Roman Reigns. It's a consolation prize, because basically what he said in that promo, the message he sent, was that all of these people that have attempted to beat Roman Reigns, John Cena, Matt Riddle, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, I already said Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Braun Strowman, Edge, Daniel Bryan, blah, 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 Logan Paul, all of these people, Brock Lesnar, none of them could beat Roman Reigns, so here's a championship for you little plebs of the WWE Universe on the WWE rosters that couldn't beat the champion, so let's just give you this championship to fight for instead. This all could have been resolved if you had Cody Rhodes beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. I don't know how many times I have to say this. I've been saying this since WrestleMania. I said it fucking before WrestleMania. And I've been saying this for weeks. People would say, we need a world champion. Roman Reigns is still champion. He's going to be champion for a while, at least probably until SummerSlam. I'm thinking he's not going to lose until WrestleMania at the fucking earliest. Maybe SummerSlam. I have a very bad feeling he's going to hold that championship for another year. So people saying like Kyle, Kyle Rochelle's question, what's so bad about Raw getting a championship? They need a title to fight for. Listen, I agree, but you could have avoided the whole fucking issue by having Cody Rhodes win at WrestleMania. You could have done the exact same situation. Now, Triple H wouldn't be out there saying, oh, we need the champion because Roman Reigns never shows up. First of all, in storyline, how the fuck does that make sense? Because he had said that, oh, Roman Reigns negotiated himself into a position where he never has to show up. First of all, he defended on like 3 of the 4. We've had 3 pay-per-views this year. He's defended on all 3 pay-per-views. He's never. The problem is that Roman Reigns is never on Raw. He's never on Raw. But as an authority figure, Triple H runs the company in storyline. I mean, we all know Vince is back in charge, but Triple H still has power regardless. Then book the guy to be there. That to me has never made sense. The whole, oh, you don't want to defend your championship, you're going to get stripped of it, blah, blah, blah. First of all, they're not bringing back the 30-day rule. They haven't done that in like 30 fucking years. People got to move on from that. If Triple H is the authority figure, Adam Pearce, whoever the fuck is in charge, why would they not book Roman Reigns for a championship defense at Backlash? And also, this has been a problem for a year. Roman Reigns became a part-timer after he became the Undisputed Champion a year ago, which, first of all, is terrible fucking timing. You put both belts on the guy, and then he gets a deal where he doesn't have to show up every week. Or most weeks. I mean, he could be gone for like a month or 2 at a time. We may not see Roman Reigns again for another month. I mean, I'm really hoping he's at Night of Champions, because if that show does indeed mark the 1000th day of Roman Reigns as champion, why the fuck would you not have him on that show? That just makes no sense. I would assume they would want him on the big Saudi show anyway. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you not book him to be there more in storyline? So this whole idea, oh, we need a champion that shows up. Where was that mentality for the last 10 years when Brock Lesnar was champion 10 times over and would never be on the fucking show? When Roman Reigns won the championship a year ago, both belts a year ago, and he's defended a number of times since then. I mean, he faced Riddle on SmackDown. Let's see, let's count on our hands here. He beat Riddle on SmackDown in June. I mean, he went 2 months without defending the championship. Whatever. He beat Riddle on SmackDown. He faced Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, beat him. He beat Drew at Clash of the Castle. He didn't defend again, I think. Well, Logan Paul he actually faced. He didn't defend at Survivor Series, but he did face Logan Paul at Crown Jewel. And then he had that one tag team match on SmackDown, which was not a defense, obviously. He faced Owens at Royal Rumble, Sami in Elimination Chamber, and Cody at WrestleMania. That's 7 title defenses. It's not enough. I mean, for a year-long reign, he should have defended more. I mean, in his first year as Universal Champion, I think he had like 13 defenses, because he also defended on SmackDown and stuff like that every pay-per-view for the most part. 7 isn't awful. It's not like he defended twice. Like Brock Lesnar, if he was champion, I think Brock's 1-year reign as like WWE Universal Champion, he probably had 4 or 5 matches on TV that were for the championship. That's not good. So, again, it's not awful. I want him to defend more, but I'm just saying, in storyline, why would Triple H just not say, listen, you gotta show up more, pal? That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The timing sucks. We've heard about these rumors for months now. Oh, they want to create a new championship. Seth Rollins and Drew and Cody could be in the running for it. Again, all that does is send the message that these people can't beat Roman Reigns. So here, take this title. To answer the big question here, who should hold that championship first before I go back to the whole consolation prize thing? Who should be the first champion? It should be Seth Rollins. Because again, I tweeted this yesterday too. If the idea is, to finish the story, it's Cody Rhodes becoming the World Heavyweight Champion, what fucking book are we reading where that's the story ending? The Cody Rhodes' whole journey to that championship. I don't know. I think to do the Roman Reigns match, to have him lose and then have him win the World Heavyweight Championship makes him look less than. And Cody Rhodes is on the same level as Roman. I mean, no one really is on the same level as Roman Reigns, but if anyone comes close, more than anyone else in the company, it's Cody Rhodes. Based on how he's been booked, how he's been received, how he's all over the shows, he's popular. I mean, how is he not the guy to beat Roman Reigns? That's another thing, too. I've had a lot of people over the last couple of days tweeting me and responding to my statement about how it should have been Cody Rhodes beating Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. You could have resolved and avoided all of this by doing that. Well, Roman Reigns shouldn't have lost to Cody Rhodes. Well, that raises another problem. What fucking problem does Cody Rhodes beat Roman Reigns raise? What problem does that create? People saying, I think the person who was beaten, who's going to be Roman Reigns, they're just not in the company yet. Excuse me? I mean, if that's the case, literally, I understand you could have made that case a year and a half ago, The problem with this Roman Reigns run is that they don't know who's going to beat Roman Reigns and when. Maybe they do. Maybe they're all working us. But clearly, it's just waiting too long. You gotta strike when the iron is hot, and they missed the fucking that point at WrestleMania. They had 3 different points to do it, and they missed all 3 of them. Drew a Clash of the Castle, which I was fine with, because, listen, he's going to face Cody. Sami Zayn in Montreal Elimination Chamber, because, listen, he's going to face Cody, it's okay. And then he loses. Cody Rhodes loses at WrestleMania. I ask you, what does that accomplish? And I still think it's going to be Cody taking the championship. Do I think it should be Cody taking the championship? Yes, I do. Because even if you don't like Cody, again, I ask you, who in this company will beat Roman Reigns? And then you may say to me, well, it's someone not in the company. Well, then who the fuck outside of this company is going to beat Roman Reigns? Kenny Omega? Nick Aldis? Jay White? My question then for that is, if WWE doesn't know who's going to beat Roman Reigns, you're just going to keep the belt on Roman until you hire someone to beat Roman Reigns when you already have a few different people that could have beaten him already? What sense does that make? They're not even hiring anyone right now. What are you talking about? I mean, whoever you think could beat Roman Reigns that isn't inside WWE may not be here anytime soon. Whether you have a specific name in mind or not, we got to start thinking to the future here. Roman Reigns, by August, will have been champion for 3 fucking years. This is not 1975. We do not need an 8-year run from Roman Reigns. I feel bad whoever gets drafted to the show that Roman Reigns is on, because they're never going to get a fucking shot at that championship, I'll tell you right now. If he loses at, like, SummerSlam, then again, what was the point of having him win at WrestleMania? To reach 1,000 days? Who gives a shit? I've been saying this for months now. Who gives a fuck about 1,000 days? He'll beat one of the Reigns and enter the top 5. Cool. He's not entering the whole... He's not going to break the all-time record. He's not holding the championship until 2028. So again, who cares? Who cares? Cody Rhodes should still beat Roman Reigns. I've been saying this for weeks, and I'm not changing my mind on this. It will mean less, I believe, and I could be wrong, but in my opinion, it will mean less than it would have at WrestleMania if Cody beat him there. If Cody beats him in a rematch, all this animosity bullshit, he's got to go through the struggle. He's got to be in the chase. The fucking chase was the last 7 years that Cody Rhodes spent outside of the company. What the fuck are we watching the same product? I mean, listen, this whole shit about, oh, he's got to struggle to get there. He's gotta fight for it, brother. Like, what are you fucking, like, imagine having that mentality, and as Will Washington of Fightful have pointed out, and other people as well, if Steve Austin did not win the championship at WrestleMania 14 because he didn't fight for it enough and then he won it at fucking Backlash instead, that's stupid. What, Batista shouldn't have beat Triple H at WrestleMania 21 because he didn't struggle enough? Sometimes you just give the babyface the win. Keeping people in chase mode is fine. The problem is that this company does it way too much. And even AEW is guilty of it as well, but WWE has set a precedent with this. And they've done the right thing and pulled the trigger at the right time. But it's like a WrestleMania 30. Daniel Bryan, he didn't struggle enough. Let's give it to him at SummerSlam instead. No! Sometimes when the moment is right, you strike when the iron is hot and it makes the most sense to do it, you do it then. Especially coming off a 3-year run for Roman Reigns, where no one else on the horizon stands a fucking chance of beating Roman. Anyone that faces Roman before Cody in a rematch, which I still assume we're getting, if Cody wins the World Heavyweight Championship, I will honestly be a little upset. It's great that he'll get his little run as world champion, but it just doesn't make sense for him to not be the WWE champion or the Universal champion and end that run. Is it going to be Braun Breaker? I don't think so. I mean, there's no one on the roster, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Level Up, that makes any slightest bit of sense to beat Roman Reigns than Cody Rhodes. And again, this whole argument, I don't think Cody Rhodes, like, listen, you don't have to like Cody Rhodes, but you have to see here, the guy is popular. He can work, he can talk, he's the company guy. You don't have to like him, but there's no one else like him on this roster that has been built up and feels like they could benefit from beating Roman the same way that he would. Oh, it should be, I'm not saying people are exactly saying this, but like, oh, Randy Orton, or oh, like even Rollins. Even Rollins. I don't think Rollins should beat Roman Reigns. The whole story of the Roman Reigns-Rollins rivalry going into the Rumble last year was that Rollins has never been beaten by Roman one-on-one on pay-per-view. And that continued at the Rumble when Roman won, or rather lost by disqualification. He got himself DQ'd. That doesn't really finish the story with Rollins beating Roman. I want the match. I want Roman and Rollins to have another match. I don't think they will. People saying, oh, they've mentioned it enough. No, I think Rollins brings it up on his own because it just doesn't make any sense why they haven't gone back to it. If they really wanted to go back to it, they could have done it at literally any point in the last year. They didn't. When Vince was in charge or when Triple H was in charge. I thought it would make sense to do it at Night of Champions, but now that we have a world champion, or a new world championship being created, I think it just makes more sense to have Rollins win that championship and let him run with it. The fact that Rollins has not had a world title run in 4 years, despite the run that he's been on in the last year or so, is criminal to me. And you have a lot of people like that. Lashley has suffered from not really having a top title to fight for. Rollins has suffered, among other people that are just stuck in limbo, because Roman Reigns is one singular world champion that is never fucking around. I mean, seriously, you could have just taken the championship off of him and then have Triple H's explanation then be, we need 2 world titles, Cody. I got to either take one from you or you got to choose one between the WWE and Universal. I already pitched this. I know RJ doesn't like this idea. I know Cody would come out. My idea was coming out of WrestleMania, Cody wins both belts. And anyone saying, there's only 2 world titles. Roman Reigns is one champion. No, he's not. According to their own fucking website, if you looked, there are 2 world champions listed, and they're both Roman Reigns. The WWE champion and the Universal Championship are 2 separate titles currently. They got to clear that shit up too. They got to give Roman, his own title. They'll probably just keep the WWE title. The Universal title is ugly anyway. I know that's the reign that he has. That's the title he has the reign with. So that's the problem. He should keep the WWE title, but the Universal Championship is the one with the reign. If you retire that lineage, it doesn't carry over. He's been undefeated for 4 years, but that's not the reign, though. You can say, he's been a champion for 1,000 days. It's not the same thing. You're not exactly breaking any records if he goes from one championship to another. It's like Becky Lynch a couple of years ago. Like, she was a champion for every active day she was in the company, which was cool, but it wasn't like she had a 3-year-long reign. No, she just wasn't beaten in 3 years because she got pregnant, came back, she won a title, she had to switch the championship when she got drafted. I mean, it's not the same thing. It's a completely different reign. I don't even know where I was going with that, but with Roman Reigns, they got to clear up the championship situation. They should take the belt off of him. I think he should keep the WWE title personally. I mean, that's the title that has 60 years worth of lineage as of this week. I'm not really sure why you would keep a championship that's only been around for 7 years and means nothing, but the Universal Championship, it has a dumb name, has a dumb design. You keep the WWE title. But you could have avoided this if Cody Rhodes just beat him at WrestleMania for both belts, and then Triple H comes out and says, We need a world champion of both shows, Cody. Coming out of the draft, we need a world champion on both shows. So you got to pick one, or I'll pick one for you. And the other roster is either getting the other championship, or they just merge the WWE and Universal, which to me makes more sense because they already unified it anyway. And then we still get a world heavyweight champion. Everything goes back to Cody beating Roman. Everything. You could have just put the belt on Cody, and this would have been resolved. I know it went on for a while about that. I still have more thoughts I'm sure I didn't bring up there. If I didn't answer any of the questions that you guys asked, I'm sure I answered. I believe I answered most of them. It's just a consolation prize. It doesn't mean anything. And like John said, doesn't this make the unification of both world titles last year even more ridiculous? Yes, it does, because they did it without any plan in place. Do you think they were planning a year ago for Cody to beat Roman? And if they were, well, they changed their fucking mind. You can't put the 2 world titles on a guy that's never around, and you have no plan for when you're going to take the belt off of him. And if it's next year, you can't go 2 years with a part-time champion. If Roman was around more and he was active, and he's deserved the part-time schedule, don't get me wrong, but he shouldn't be champion then. For one singular champion? No. It was the same issue they had with Brock years ago when Brock was barely around, but they put the championship on him, and they only had 1 world title. That's a fucking problem. We've dealt with this enough in the last 10 years. I'm ready for more full-time champions. We can have a debate as to whether 1 world champion is necessary or 2. But regardless, I think we can all agree the champion needs to be around. And again, you're probably thinking then, why are you upset that they're creating a second championship? I'm not. I'm just upset about the circumstances because the title comes across as less than, which was the whole issue with the World Heavyweight Championship a decade ago. It took them one day to establish that championship as a glorified fucking mid-card title by saying no one can beat Roman Reigns, so take this instead. How is Roman Reigns still the undisputed champion? Again, they have to clarify this trash. I think they just came up with it because it sounds cool to have 2 world titles without really thinking it through. And if you're thinking, oh, just let it play out, brother, they never think these things through. There's a precedent for this sort of thing. They never think these things through. So I'm confident in saying they're doing this as a reactionary move because they don't want to have Roman get beat, but they also need a second world championship. I still say Cody should beat Roman, even though he should have done it the first time. Whatever. It's better than him not beating him at all. I would book Cody on the same show as Roman. I have a feeling Cody's going to Raw, Roman's going to SmackDown. They won't even interact. And then Cody might win the world title in Saudi Arabia. I just think that's a dumb idea. I think the perfect person for that championship is Rollins, first of all. And second of all, if Rhodes gets his big moment with a championship just created, and that wasn't the championship that he was even chasing to begin with. I mean, the whole title that his father almost held was the WWE title. I know he's ending the Universal Championship reign, but you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He gets the WWE title last year, this past year at Mania, but then he also ends the Universal Championship reign because they're 2 separate belts. They got to clear it up. I have a headache right now from rambling on about this. I apologize. But the bottom line is this. That World Heavyweight Championship currently means not nothing, but it is already a few notches below the Undisputed Championship because, first of all, we have an Undisputed Champion. How the fuck does that make sense, like I said? And 2, it's basically just a tournament of losers that couldn't beat Roman Reigns. So it sends the message that the championship is just, it's the non-Roman Reigns title, and that's a problem. It was a problem 10 years ago when they opened their fucking Raw shows with a World Heavyweight Championship defense and defended it in the openers of pay-per-views. I mean, they do that now with the Undisputed Championship on occasion. Very rarely, but even still, I mean, it was at a point in 2013 where that World Heavyweight Championship meant nothing. I mean, Ziggler had a very forgettable run. The Del Rio runs were not good. That championship was just reduced to a fucking prop at that point. And they're already back to doing that 10 years later. Some things change. The more things change, the more they stay the same, even 10 years apart. All right. Let's see. Let's go through the questions that did not have to do with the championship that I did not answer. Micah does it from YouTube. Do you think WWE should split the New Day in the draft with Xavier Woods going to Raw and you keep Kofi Kingston on SmackDown? Maybe you can have Xavier defeat Austin Theory for the United States Championship. I wouldn't be opposed to that because I'm just tired of the New Day. I mean, they're entertaining. I like the New Day, but what are you going to do? Have them chase the tag titles again? I agree. I would split them personally. I was very happy when they split them in the draft in 2020 and then kept them apart again in 2021. They just had Big E go to Raw and the rest of New Day go to SmackDown. It wasn't long before they got reunited on SmackDown because Big E got moved from Raw to SmackDown after he lost the WWE Championship. Inexplicably, he just got moved. If Big E comes back, which I think he will, it just might be a while, they're all going to be on the same show. I think WWE likes them as a unit. They give Big E his big push. That was the whole reason why they split them in the first place, was to give Big E his big push. Woods and Kingston were still on the same show and also still a tag team. They need tag teams. I mean, the New Day have been in that position for almost a decade now, so it's not exactly fresh. I guess you could do them against Owens and Zayn at some point. As long as it's not them against the Usos for the upteenth time, then I'm content. But yeah, I don't see that happening. I love Woods. I think the guy's great. I don't see them ever putting a mid-card championship on him. I know he won King of the Ring, but that was like a token thing. Like, oh, cool, you've always wanted this. Here you go. They did nothing with him coming out of it. He was right back in the tag team scene. I feel like they see the New Day in that light. They'll give them all accolades. Hey, Big E, take the WWE title. Hey, Kofi, take the WWE title. And then as soon as they have their little run, they go right back to where they were before, which is a step backward. And I love the New Day stuff, don't get me wrong. It's tiresome, but I love it. They're enjoyable and they're over. But they could have them be a team while also exploring singles opportunities. They've done that a little bit more with Woods and Kofi on SmackDown. I just don't see them going to separate shows. I don't. His second question: who on the WWE main roster has the chance to become another Kofi Mania type story, speaking of which, where they've been the underdog for so long and finally win the big one? I would like it to be Dolph Ziggler. That Ziggler Kofi Mania moment happened 10 years ago in 2013, not 2023, but 2013, when he won the World Heavyweight Championship with the Money in the Bank briefcase. And then they took it off of him 6 weeks later, and he never held it again. No, Ziggler is not washed. I mean, the guy can go, and I like Ziggler. The problem is that his booking has been so fucking awful that it's impossible to take the guy seriously. We were at that point 5 years ago, let alone in 2023. So the answer to that is no. Who I would have it be instead, I mean, we had the answer a couple of months ago with Sami Zayn. I would not have had Sami Zayn. I was content when Sami lost to Roman at Elimination Chamber, provided that Roman was going to lose to Cody at WrestleMania, and they didn't do that. I still think Sami can have that moment where he can win the world title. I think I don't think they see him as a perennial main eventer, but I could see him getting a Kofi Mania type run. They kind of had that going into Elimination Chamber, and then he lost, which he should have. But in the retrospect, it's like, no, he shouldn't have won. He shouldn't have won the championship on that show. I know it'll never mean as much as it would have then in Montreal that night. I still think he can get another run, and I think people can rally behind him again and really push for him to be a world champion. So I'm going to go Sami Zayn. Johnny would be cool, but I don't think he really has that fan support, not even remotely close right now. So maybe down the road, but Sami Zayn's the first name that comes to mind. Billy from YouTube. About a month ago, I think it was Fightful who voted Tony Khan as the Booker of the Year. What are your thoughts on this? And is there anyone within the wrestling business, within wrestling, that you feel is better placed for that title? So they did name Tony Khan Booker of the Year. Same with I think the Observer Awards as well, the Meltzer Awards, whatever the fuck they are. I do not agree with that. I think the Booker of the Year for 2022, for me, it depends on what the period is in which we're judging. If it's from January 2020 to December of 2020, even though he was only in charge for 5 or 6 months, I would still go Triple H. I mean, I honestly, even on the whole, AEW, I would say creatively had their worst year to date in 2022. Some of that wasn't their fault. You had departures, you had injuries, among other issues, people being just little babies, acting like children. I mean, partially that is Tony Khan's fault. We've established that already. I just didn't love the AEW product last year. I mean, the product this year hasn't been much better. But the product overall in 2022, they had a pretty hot stretch in the first couple of months of the year, and then it died down by the summer, and they never really reclaimed that momentum. I think they kind of have not the same issue right now, but they're kind of getting back on the right track, which is good. Now, I don't think Tony Khan was the Booker of the Year for last year. I don't watch New Japan, so I don't, maybe them, I don't know. I would go Triple H because Triple H made, but even pre-Triple H, the WWE product was not terrible. Like, they had a lot of good pay-per-views last year. The weekly television show, I can't say was exhilarating, but the product wasn't at an all-time low before Vince took over. There were a lot of dumb decisions being made, but the weekly shows were not atrocious to sit through, at least in my opinion. And then when Triple H took over, the product was, to me, a lot better. He hasn't solved every issue. He has a lot of flaws himself as a booker. And there were, a few different dead periods from when Triple H took over. But from July through December, I enjoyed Raw, for the most part, and SmackDown specifically, a lot more than I did Dynamite. So I always felt that Triple H to me was the Booker of the Year for 2022, more so than Tony Khan, but that's just one person's opinion. No L from Facebook, thoughts on the new championship and who should win it. We already talked about that. Do you think the WWE draft has lost its glory with the whole brand split? I don't know exactly what you mean by that. If you mean that the draft has been devalued because of how they haven't really valued the brand split, then yes, if that's what you mean. Because the whole reason why we have a draft, the question reads as if you're asking, has the draft been negatively affected by the brand split? Well, the whole reason why we have a draft is because of the brand split. So without a brand split, you don't get a draft. The draft doesn't really mean anything anymore, if that's what you're asking, because they constantly switch people from show to show, which sometimes you have to do. But for the most part, you really don't. I mean, you can orchestrate trades and stuff like that, which they've done on occasion. But they have people go from show to show without explanation, and it completely ruins the point of having a draft. If you don't really have exclusive rosters and people go to different shows anyway, whether they sign with the other show and storyline or they just appear on the other brand, then what's the point of having a brand split? And how does that make the draft special? Like, we've had a lot of cross-brand rivalries in the last year that have been enjoyable, but then just don't have a brand split, So I am excited for the draft because I am a draft guy. It was one of the first major WWE specials that I was a fan for 15 years ago. I've enjoyed it ever since. I like the whole changing of the guard in WWE and whatnot. But the problem is that if they go right back to having people appear on the other show without question, without any explanation at all, then it's like, what's the point? So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't exactly mean anything. They really need to reinforce the idea that, hey, listen, this brand split matters, and we're going to actually enforce it this time, because if they don't, who gives a shit? You know, who gives a fuck? They really have to remind us of that, but they haven't. I thought Triple H might mention that on Raw this week and say, hey, you can't swap shows. Like, we've been doing that for the last year, even though we've had exclusive rosters for the most part. You can't swap shows. They haven't said that yet. Maybe they'll say that on Friday. I don't think they will. I don't think they really care about those minute details like most of us probably do. I'm a fucking nerd, but it also just sends the message, why would anyone care about the draft if you see people appear on the other show anyway? That's just common sense. So it has lost its glory in that sense, but the idea of the draft and the way it's been presented and the layout of it has always been flawed for a long time. Now, whether it be the time of the year it's been happening or the layout of it, the lack of GMs making the picks, that just makes the most sense. They need to do a better job of that going forward. At Lily Reynolds from Twitter, who do you think will be the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion? I already mentioned that. At Iwagu, the first question I already mentioned as well. Their second question, after Daniel Bryan lost to Roman Reigns, while I thought he would immediately go to Raw, and he's talking about in 2021, I've recently been thinking, what if he competed on NXT UK and challenged Walter for the UK title while having matches with Marcel and Fabian? Would you have wanted that? No. Bryan and Gunther would have been cool, or Walter at the time, whatever. I'm just so used to saying Gunther at this point. That would have been cool, but you got to remember the timeline. Bryan wrapped up on SmackDown. The guy just main evented WrestleMania. Honestly, if anything, which is what I was expecting, I thought he would go to NXT. He got banished from SmackDown. So his only real options were NXT and Raw. NXT UK, I remember the time never even really being an option. Because again, you got to remember the timeline. That Bryan thing happened in May of 2021. NXT UK did not get fans back for a long time. WWE got fans back that summer. NXT already had some fans in the building in 2021 before they even, started bringing back actual crowds. NXT would have made the most sense if he was going to stay in WWE just because there he could have worked with Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole, among other people. On Raw, he had a couple fresh opponents, but, it wasn't like, who cares? It's like he's on Raw, like, okay, whatever. NXT UK, he could have had a couple of good matches. The only real money match for him there at that point was with Walter. Walter was about to lose the championship to Ilya Dragunov anyway, like a couple months later. So they would have had a match, Bryan would have lost, and that would have been it. It wouldn't have been the same thing as when Finn wanted to go to NXT UK, because again, same thing, like you're paying Finn all this money just to go to NXT UK. I think I would have been fine with that in 2020, but by 2021, it's like, all right, he's got to go back to the main roster. They could use him, and then they really didn't for the most part. But with Bryan, it's just like, you would have gotten the Walter match out of it, but it's like, okay, like the guy just main evented WrestleMania. They had no fans. It would have just gone to waste. I don't think you paid Bryan the amount of money they would have re-signed him for just to go to NXT UK, a brand that no one gave a shit about at that point. So I don't think that would have worked. His next question, your thoughts on Low-Ki as a wrestler? I mean, you've asked me a lot about Low-Ki in the past, the former Caval from WWE. I think he's a good worker. I've always liked Caval, Low-Ki. Anytime I saw him in WWE or in Impact, I haven't seen him in a couple of years now. I wouldn't say he's overrated, but we just don't see enough of him, and I heard he had attitude issues, and that was what really cost him a lot of opportunities in many promotions. I enjoyed him as a wrestler. He was never one of my favorites, but I thought the guy was very talented. At noob_n_co_TV, I already asked about the World Championship. I already answered that. His second question, with WWE missing out on signing Nick Aldis and Jay White, which free agent wrestlers might WWE have a chance to sign? I'm seeing Alex Gracia is still a free agent, and Natalia Markova isn't signed to the NWA, so that's who I believe WWE should sign before AEW, Ring of Honor, or Impact Wrestling. Alex Gracia, I've seen on Dark a lot. She's decent. I haven't really seen anything that would tell me that WWE should sign her, but, I guess. Like, I saw Roxanne Perez in Impact and Ring of Honor before she went to WWE. I saw Cora Jade. I mean, Alex Gracia would have been the same, like on the same level as Fallon Henley. I think her name was Tesha Price, I want to say, on Dark. WWE signed a few Dark wrestlers. At least Tesha Price, now Fallon Henley, she seemed pretty good from what I saw. Not that Gracia is bad, I just haven't seen enough of her to really say, wow, WWE should sign her. Natalia Markova, I know you ask about her every single week. She's talented. She's a standout in that women's division in the NWA. I don't see why WWE wouldn't take a chance on her. I mean, I know they're not signing anyone right now. That's the whole problem. I wouldn't mind seeing her in WWE getting a shot. Maybe she'd be exposed as being a bigger fish in a smaller pond in the NWA. You could say the same thing with Nick Aldis. So I just think Nick Aldis just belongs in WWE. His style just perfectly matches WWE, in my opinion. Other free agents WWE should sign that they might have a chance to. I know, like Dutch and Vincent, they're not going to be, difference makers in WWE. It would have been cool to see them in WWE, but they just went back to Ring of Honor instead because WWE didn't sign him. Casey Navarro, I'm still hoping WWE signs, and EJ Nduka as well, two standouts from MLW. They're both phenomenal. Casey Navarro was great. EJ Nduka is awesome as well. I hope they back. And I mean, Nduka was already in WWE. I hope he goes back. I hope Navarro gets signed by WWE. I could see him thriving in NXT. I would say Kylie Ray, but I actually just saw that she got pregnant, so congrats to her on that, because I know, she always had, like, the liability, I don't know if that's the right word, issues with the whole mental health stuff, and she was drinking at one point, and she would always flake out of every company that she worked for. If she cleaned up her act, then she would have been a good signing for WWE. For whatever reason, that just didn't work out, and she's pregnant now, so it doesn't matter. I heard, Hikuleo and Tama Tonga, they had interest in. I don't really care all that much about either guy to really see them in WWE, but it would have been interesting. Kota Ibushi would be interesting. I don't know if they still have a chance of signing him, but I don't see that happening, but that would be interesting. They don't really have a chance on that, but, possible, I guess. Kenny Omega and the Bucks and those guys, I think they just stay put in AEW, but they should definitely try to pursue those guys when they have a chance. There's a number of people that have become free agents from these various promotions that I would like to see WWE pick up, but Nick Aldis and Jay White specifically. Jay White is in AEW, so that's not going to happen. Nick Aldis, he did sign with Impact, but I believe it was a short-term deal. So I'm hoping that he'll do his thing in Impact, lose to Steve Maclin for the World Championship, and then maybe try again with WWE a little bit later on in the year. That's what I would like to see happen personally. But that's just me. At Reborn Again, I already talked about the World Championship. His second question. So the whole Punk was backstage at Raw thing. This was the other big story from the week. Was it just him visiting or trying to strong-arm Tony Khan a little? I think it's honestly a little bit of both. I think there's a lot of everything that people are speculating. Is he trying to get back into WWE? I don't think that's 100% the reason. Could that have something to do with it? Maybe. Because I just think the whole idea that Punk was so fucking furious at this company for so long. He wanted nothing to do with WWE. He hated Triple H. He had issues with them. And then all of a sudden, he's like talking to him backstage. Like, Punk is a completely different person now. I mean, I love to see it. If he's finally burying the hatchet with a lot of these people, then great. Like, if he sought out The Miz to apologize to him, that does not sound like a Punk thing to do at all. I think it's great. But the timing is interesting because he knows that people are going to talk about him. He knows that this would have gone out that he was backstage. He has no one to blame but himself for that. But I think, like, he'll complain about, like, the dirt sheets reporting on him, but then, like, go out and do shit like this. I mean, then just don't go to Raw. You know what I'm saying? I love Punk. It's just interesting how that works out. No, I think it was him trying to show AEW, listen, I could always go back to WWE when my contract is up. Or, hey, like, I'm just trying to make amends. Like, the idea that he's just visiting, someone else mentioned that as well. At Bill Meister, Bill, his question also was, your thoughts on CM Punk at Raw and the reports of him being asked to leave on direction from Vince McMahon. I mean, and as soon as he got that, edict that he's got to leave, he did leave. He didn't, like, create a, scene or anything. And he also said, personally, I think he was just showing up as it was in Chicago. I don't think it needs to be read into much, but I'm interested in your thoughts. No, I do think there's more to it, just solely because WWE has been in Chicago a million times in the last 10 years. And only now is he visiting? I mean, come on. I'm not saying he's trying to get back into WWE, but it's like, that's no coincidence. In the midst of his current situation in AEW, with what's going on with him right now and everything else, it's a factor. I mean, all the buzz and reports about Punk not being happy or wanting to come back, wanting to wrestle again. Would he ever go back to WWE? Maybe, if he's open to the idea. I mean, he always said, I'm never going back. I said 10 years ago, dude, he could go back. I mean, people are like, I never see him going back. Well, okay, everyone goes back, and Punk is no fucking different. Clearly, he got softer with age, which is good, because the guy holds a lot of fucking grudges. I doubt if he was still that upset at Triple H that he would have talked to Triple H backstage at Raw. I would be shocked if that was the case. I'm sure he's either gotten over it or was trying to make amends himself, which is, again, not like Punk, but it's good to see. I think it's a little bit of everything. He might be gauging the interest from WWE on a potential return down the road if the AEW thing doesn't work out and he doesn't like working with the Bucks and people like that. He wants to show them that he could be interested, that he's a changed person. He also wanted to bury the hatchet with The Miz and maybe with Triple H, among other people. He was probably just there to see friends. I think it's a little bit of everything. So, the Punk stuff to me is fascinating. He's one of the most fascinating individuals in wrestling history because it's like there's always something going on with him, whether he's in the business or not. People will just... It's amazing, I'm among the fan following, but it's like anything he does is newsworthy. For better or for worse. It's just funny to say. John's third question, do you think this brand split, could see the return of brand-exclusive pay-per-views or premium live events? I'm not sure the roster is deep enough for them to do it. They have a lot of wrestlers under contract, but not a lot of stars. I saw that report. Did Meltzer report that? I don't know where that came from. It might have been Meltzer in the newsletter or whatever. I'm actually not in favor of that. When SmackDown did it, so they've done it twice already. It didn't work out either time. It lasted a lot longer when they first did the brand split in 2002. They did brand exclusive pay-per-views from what? 2002? Did it start in 2002? I think it did, because I remember No Mercy being a SmackDown pay-per-view. I think Raw had matches on that show. But anyway. They started doing it in 2002, 2003 and stopped doing it in 2007. So it lasted around 4 or 5 years. The most recent time, from 2016, it only ended in 2018. So it only went like a year and a half. A lot of those Raw exclusive pay-per-views were not fucking good at all. Hell in the Cell I was there for, that show sucked. Like we had fucking Dana Brooke and Bayley on the show. The Club against Enzo and Cass, which no one gave a shit about. Like, if you have the star power and the depth to really, and you want to create stars, then yeah, I think it could work. I think that could work maybe with AEW better than WWE, honestly. I like the idea of a brand split, but WWE has shown they're just not capable of it, and they just give up on shit way too fucking quickly, or they just don't put in the effort to making it work, and then they blame the fans, or it's like, oh, it doesn't work. No, it doesn't work because you made it not work. It could work if you actually put the effort in. There was a lot of good SmackDown pay-per-views at that point early on, but even the SmackDown pay-per-views in 2017 were fucking abysmal. Like, Battleground sucked when Jinder won the champion. Like, Backlash, like, no one gave a shit. No one gave a fuck. Only early on in 2016, in the brand split, in the second incarnation of it, did those brand-exclusive pay-per-views work. And if they did that, they'd go back to having, like, 15 pay-per-views a year, and I also didn't like that either. We're finally at a point where we're getting less pay-per-views. We do not need more. The only way it could work is, again, A, if they, like you said, John, really put in the effort into making their roster deep enough and creating new stars and stuff like that, and having compelling storylines and stuff like that. That's one. But two, if they don't add more pay-per-views. If they split up the existing pay-per-views into brand-exclusive shows, that would be great. I don't see the Saudi shows being a Raw show or a SmackDown show. They want all the star power on those shows. And you already have the big four. Money in the Bank, I don't see being a brand exclusive event again. It was in 2017, but that was the only year where it was brand exclusive. That should probably be both brands anyway. Both brands should have an opportunity to win the briefcase. Maybe one gets Money in the Bank and the other gets King of the Ring. I don't know, but I just don't see how it makes sense. Like, would you give, like, if Extreme Rules and Hell in a Cell and that sort of stuff is no more anyway, I don't know. Would you make, like, for example, Backlash upcoming, like a Raw show, and then Night of Champions a SmackDown show? I mean, I guess if that's the other brand's, like, if Night of Champions we're going to see a new world champion crowned, new world heavyweight champion, I guess that show would belong to whatever brand is having the new world champion crown. But then Roman Reigns wouldn't be on the show. And that's the day that his 1,000th, championship, that he reaches the 1,000th day as champion. So I wouldn't do it. I think it has its positives, but I feel like they just have proven it doesn't work due to their own incompetence, and they're not willing to make it work, so I just wouldn't do it. I also just want less pay-per-views. More pay-per-views is just, especially when quality over quantity. If you have more pay-per-views, but they're just decent at best, I'd rather have less shows that are better than more shows that aren't good. Let's see. Already mentioned Kyle's first question. His second question, if Roxanne Perez gets drafted, what do you think about a feud with her and Rhea Ripley in the future? That could be fun. Yeah, Roxanne and Rhea Ripley would be a lot of fun. I do think Roxanne's getting drafted. I was kind of waiting to see what happened at the Spring Breakin' show. I was expecting, honestly, Tiffany to win the championship so Indy could get called up. I think Indy's been in NXT a lot longer than Roxanne. I would call up Indy before Roxanne, but Roxanne's also quite good, and I think she can do well on the main roster. I think she could benefit from a little bit more time in NXT solely for the fact that she could work on her mic skills and stuff, but she has improved, and she's great, so... And the fact she got pinned in that match, Indy won on Tuesday. And even with Indy hurt, she still retained the championship. I think it was a legit injury, too. I think Roxanne's getting called up to Raw or SmackDown. Probably SmackDown on the same show as Rhea. I think those two could have a lot of fun matches, like you said. At Grummy 1976, their question was, given the storytelling wasn't great under Triple H, but at least they got some TV time, but Vince McMahon seems intent on keeping the women off of TV as much as possible, where do you see the women's division heading into 2023, or heading as 2023 rolls on? That goes along with that Leron Ford's question. Right after that, asking how can WWE fix the issues in their women's division? That's also a loaded question. Attempting to build up new stars and featuring some women more consistently. I think Tegan Nox is great. I think she can get over. I think she's super talented. She's never fucking featured. They got to give us a reason to care about these women. Currently, people have no reason to care for the most part about Michin, about Candice LeRae, even Piper Niven. Like, they're just not on the show consistently enough. If you're on the show every week, I could see them getting over. Like, Chelsea Green, surprisingly, is getting over because she's on the show every week. And the Karen gimmick has actually exceeded all expectations and has been very entertaining so far. You got to give these women consistent TV time. Cutting out segments and stuff like that is not going to help. And this is also a Triple H issue, too. This isn't a Vince McMahon problem that just started. Like, they've been dragging on the Candice and Nikki Cross thing for fucking 2 or 3 months. Months! I mean, we're reaching AEW territory as far as dragging out stories that have no endgame, are not consistently featured, and no one gives a shit about. So you gotta have better stories. They have the talent. The talent is not the problem. They have a lot of women's talent, a lot of great talent. Even with Sasha being gone, they have a lot of women's stars, or women that can be stars. It's all about character development, giving them more time, giving people a reason to care about these women, and doing more stories out of the title picture. That's why I like Becky and Trish. The only downside is that it doesn't really benefit either of them, because Trish and Becky are already established. Like, we need more stories that are good stories, not like, oh, like you pushed me backstage, or oh, I'm crazy now, like Liv Morgan was. Like, the Liv and Sonya feud for as long as it lasted was good, but it was only like 2 or 3 weeks. And they moved on from it, and we didn't see either woman on TV for a little while, so... That's the problem with the women's division on these shows. More consistency is needed, and just some better stories, and not the same matches we've been seeing for a while now. Like, I thought Damage Control was a great idea. Like, oh, a women's faction, that's cool. And they fucking shit the bed with it. Like, I don't know. They just need to do a better job. Like, they've created stars in Rhea and Bianca, and that's great. But they could use more stars beyond them when the 4 horsewomen eventually all go away, and more women come up. More stories is key. More non-title stories is key. That's really what it comes down to for me, along with the character development. Last question from @Dustin_Dustin with a Y in Dustin. His question was, would you like to see authority figures / GMs being a part of Raw and SmackDown again? What are your thoughts on the news of WWE potentially going back to brand-specific pay-per-view live events, premium live events? I already answered the second part of that question a minute ago. As far as the GMs go, I do want to see GMs back. I just don't think, and this would have already been established if they were doing this, you can't really do a draft without general managers. I mean, how do you determine from a storyline standpoint who goes on what show if it's the same guy and Adam Pearce making the picks? That just doesn't make any sense. You don't have to get rid of Adam Pearce completely, but when they got rid of the GMs a couple of years ago, like 5 years ago now, it's been long enough. But if you're going to do a brand split, you kind of need 2 different authority figures. Adam Pearce gets stretched thin by being on both shows. It overexposes him. And it also just doesn't make any sense. And so at least when they did the draft in 2016, they brought back GMs and they, assigned them to each brand. Like Mick Foley, Stephanie was the commissioner technically, and Mick Foley ran Raw. And then on SmackDown, it was Shane McMahon as the commissioner and Daniel Bryan running Raw. So... It was, it worked for a while. I mean, Mick Foley was completely undermined as Raw GM during his time there. But at least it made sense. You need GMs in order for a brand split to work and a draft to work. Unless they introduce new GMs on Friday, then I just don't see how this works out exactly. So, with the draft happening in 2 days, I would bring back GMs. I just think it makes most. If you're not going to do a brand split, then that's fine. But in order for it to make the most sense, you need GMs. Who would those people be? I mean, new people would be nice. Like Regal would have been perfect, but I don't think he can appear on TV right now. But he's not exactly a new person. Far from it. Like, would you really bring back someone like a Kurt Angle for the role, or like an Eric Bischoff again? I mean, again, they probably need new people for those roles. I'm not really sure who that would be. Big E's not, wrestling right now. Could that be him? Maybe. I mean, that wouldn't be terrible. That's a possibility. I don't know. They can come up with something, but they need more GM. Adam Pearce can be one of them. They would just have to figure out the other GM. And Kurt Angle would be nice, although his run wasn't great because he forgot a lot of his lines anytime he was on TV. I don't even know if he would want to do it again, but he's a possibility as well. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's episode of #AskGSM, episode 491, April 26, 2023. Thank you guys for checking the show. I appreciate it. I appreciate you bearing with me through my long tirade on the New World Championship and the pros and cons. I'll probably have more to say tomorrow on WrestleRant Radio, so stay tuned for that. The discussion between myself and Mr. Marceau, breaking down the New World Championship and previewing the WWE Draft. Who goes where? We're doing a mock draft tomorrow, so check it out on all the usual podcast platforms. As far as this show goes, if you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on Twitter at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. I'm botching now. Drop a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video, and I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys, and like I said earlier, check out my exclusive interview, if you haven't already, with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Over 20 minutes of video here on the channel, and an article form over on Bleacher Report from earlier today. And as we discussed at the end of the interview, I adopted the "Catch Your Ass Down the Road" catchphrase from Steve Austin himself. So I give a nod to him. It was a real cool honor. Check it out when you can. Enjoy, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.